not improving. So, thank you for the opportunity to come and present the theology on tap. But when it was put together, it's just a great idea to a way to get young adults together, and I'm glad to see that it's continued now. We couldn't remember how long it's been going on, but quite a while, I think. So, so again, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about a really pretty important topic. It's called preferential option for the poor. I don't know if you've ever had anyone to come and talk with you about the principles of Catholic social teaching. You know, justice is an important concept within the Catholic Church, and it's commonly known that within the Church there are 7 principles. In fact, I have a handout that I'll give you that lists the 7 principles, and the preferential option for the poor is one of the 7. So we'll kind of focus on that this evening. And I certainly would like to keep it informal, that if you have comments or questions, I'm certainly not opposed to you asking that at the time. And so if there aren't any during the first 30 minutes or so, we'll leave some time at the end for questions or discussion. So, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and hand out does anyone remember, have you had someone come and talk to you about the principles of Catholic social teaching? Okay. Not within the last year? Okay. Well, what I'm handing out are, there's different ways for to divide these, but this is the one that I've been aware of mostly. It's the major themes of Catholic social teachings, and it lists obviously 7. With number 1, and everyone is familiar with this, the life and dignity of the human person. There's a strong teaching of the Catholic Church that everyone has value, no matter male, female, poor, rich, live in a big house, live in a less than big house, but everyone is created in the image of God. And then the other 6 kind of key off of that. And number 4 is the one that I'll be talking about this evening, the option for the poor. And again, an important teaching proclaims that the basic moral test is how our most vulnerable members are faring, and our most vulnerable members are basically the poor. So this has to do with how we treat the poor, how we recognize the poor. And poor is defined not only in terms of income, but it's widows, it's people who are abused, it's disabled, it's really anyone who has some significant hardship as part of their life. So anyway, that's what I really want to talk about. And I'll maybe broaden it a little bit, since you've not had someone, at least recently, to come and talk with you about social justice. Because justice has been an important part of the Church, of the Catholic Church. Everything I say tonight is, while I may agree with it, it's not an opinion. It's really, it reflects the teaching of the Catholic Church. And so justice has always been an important element in the life of the Church. In both in the Old and New Testament, justice was an important theme. In fact, I didn't do it, but I've read that in the Bible there's over 2,000 references to justice and the poor. So it's an important theme. In the Old Testament, the covenant is the important concept. people in the Old Testament were in relationship with God because of the covenant that existed between God and Israel. What they meant by that was that as a member of the covenant community, each of us was in relationship with every other person, including the poor and the needy, one's family and even strangers, aliens, and out of these relationships arose responsibilities and demands. The just person was faithful to these responsibilities and demands. Each person felt some relationship and responsibility for every other person in the community. And that's the important concept that is carried forward from the Old Testament to today. The feeling of responsibility for each other. And in the New Testament, this was only reinforced. The two major commandments of the New Testament is to love the Lord your God with your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. So this concept of preferential option for the poor means we have a responsibility not only to our neighbors, not only to our families, but to everyone else within the community. As we have been taught, Jesus came for all of us. The poor and the rich, the male and the female, children, adults, sinners, non-sinners. But much of his public life revolved around the poor. If you read the New Testament, I'm sure you have, who did Jesus associate with? He didn't associate with the rich by any means, or with the educated. He associated with those who were poor, with prostitutes, with individuals who were vulnerable. He cured lepers. He came for those who did not have rather than for those who had. And he repeatedly pointed out that the rich had to share with the poor, and that the rich, if they did not share, would have a more difficult time getting to heaven. So this particular principle has to deal with our responsibility for all. And there's been lots and lots of teachings put out by bishops, put out by popes about justice. But the one that was the most recent and probably the most important came during a period that none of you knew, maybe you've heard about, but Vatican II. There was a document put out at that time. It's called the Constitution of the Church in the modern world. And this particular document gave justice a whole new positioning within the Catholic Church. In fact, the document said that there were 3 essential elements within the Catholic Church. That to be Catholic and to be fully Catholic, you had to participate in all 3 of these elements. Would anyone have, and they're part of our church. Did anyone have any idea what one may be? To be Catholic, what are most important elements of the church? Our sacraments is one. That, were you going to say?
I was going to say Mass.
The Mass, right, which is the Eucharist. Of the 7 sacraments, the Eucharist is one that we participate in time and time again. So that's an essential element. Another essential element is the New Testament. It's our belief in proclaiming the good news. Something every time you go to Mass is done. So gospel is the second most important element, and the one that I think caught most people by surprise. The third element is justice, social justice. That in order to be fully Catholic, we need to act for justice, we need to be a person of justice, we need to be part of a church of justice, which then means we need to advocate for the poor. If the poor somehow isn't part of our lives, that we're not fully Catholic. And who better exemplifies that than our current Pope, Pope Francis? You know, I think many of the previous popes that I know certainly believed that, but didn't put into action as Pope Francis has. I mean, it just amazes me how in so many different ways he brings the poor into his life. He's currently in South America, I think, Ecuador. And I think that's why he was so successful. He came from Argentina. South America is a very poor country. He rode to work on a bus, city bus. You know, he was just always in with the poor of Argentina, and still is now in with the poor of Rome and Ecuador. So if there's any one person who we can emulate, it certainly would be Pope Francis. I mean, he's the one at this point who, as I said, really exemplifies what preferential option for the poor really means. But again, this has been part of the Catholic Church for many years. In fact, the Church's teaching says that the needs of the poor take priority over the desires of the rich. The rights of workers over the maximization of profits. The preservation of the environment over uncontrolled industrial expansion. The production to meet social needs over production for military purposes. I mean, the Church's teaching has said for many years that if you had a dollar and the choice was to give it to invest it versus give it to someone who's poor, the choice should be we give it to someone who's poor. So, in the Council of Bishops, from the U.S. bishops in 2005, is saying the same thing, that the basic moral test is how our most vulnerable members are faring. In a society marred by deepening divisions between rich and poor, the rich cannot become richer at the expense of the poor. That creates a basic economic inequality. But, and I'll talk a little bit later, I think that's exactly what's happening now. People are enriching themselves at the expense of those who have less. As Pope Francis repeatedly points out, injustices generally impact the poor or low income, but they do it disproportionately to other income groups. You know, it's the poor who get screwed, more so than others. So that it puts the poor in a more vulnerable position and at risk than other socioeconomic groups to any real injustice. So that a basic Catholic social teaching is, or ask the question is, how are our most vulnerable members faring? Are they living in a world that they have half a chance or even more than a half a chance of bettering their situation rather than being victimized? And I think the evidence shows that it's more the latter, that they are being more victimized and their positions are worsening rather than that, as a Catholic, should be a major concern of us. And the Church says that we should do what we can to make that different. So I thought what I would do would be to look at two issues, one being income distribution or wealth distribution, and the other being the environment. Of course, the environment is a hot topic, with the new encyclical that just came out from Pope Francis, and creating lots and lots of disturbances among people. Not everyone was happy to see the encyclical come out about the environment. But the first one I want to kind of briefly talk about is income distribution or wealth distribution. This is one that really concerns me a lot because this economy really separates the rich from the poor, or the not so rich from the poor. As I said, I think the evidence is that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And so again, let me quote Pope Francis. How many have heard about the trickle-down theory?
Very nice.
So, and again, some of these are the Church's opinions, right or wrong. People disagree, and so some of the issues are a little bit controversial. Trickle-down theory is certainly one. This is one that's been around for a long time, and basically the belief is that if you let the economy work as it currently is, which means people have a lot of latitude, can accumulate a lot of wealth, but the idea being that if you allow people to accumulate wealth, it eventually will trickle down. There'll be more jobs, there'll be higher incomes. Well, as Pope Francis has stated, it's never proven to be true. This is an example being minimum wage. Minimum wage has been $7.25 for I don't know how many years. And everyone agrees that it needs to increase, but it's never increased. It's not increased for a couple of reasons. One is that not all employers, and I don't want to use all or but many employers refuse to increase wages because of the impact it will have upon their profits. Every year in the legislature, minimum wage gets talked about, but legislators are basically not disposed to increase minimum wage because they're afraid that it will jeopardize their being reelected. So minimum wage continues at $7.25, which is about $15,000 a year, without benefits, and so that just doesn't create much opportunity for people who are paid minimum wage to accumulate. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just curious if you thought there was any research behind, so the idea of a living wage, is there any idea of what number that would be, whether that's a salary or whether that's like $1 per hour amount? Like, could part of the problem be that we just don't know what the number should be? Does that make sense?
I think that, yeah, and I think that's part of it. There is information that if when $7.25 was created, if that amount had kept track or had kept pace with inflation, the minimum wage would be about $10. So I don't know if that's the key number. But when I was employed, I was in management, and for the last 10 years, people were really people were concerned about what they were going to be paid. But people were more concerned about their benefits, particularly insurance. And I think that is still true. So wage is one aspect of it, but I think benefits is also another. So.
Thank you.
And again, there are exceptions to this. I mean, I'm not wanting to paint the picture that everyone who's rich is greedy and not sharing. Then you do have people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, who's sharing a significant amount of their. Now they're still going to be rich even when they share. So, but they're doing lots of good things, particularly in foreign countries, where they are sharing. But again, from the church's point of view, the concept is the poor are our responsibility. They're not in. And I think that's what they really want for us to learn and to feel and to act upon. That the poor are out there, but we have a responsibility to work with them, to interact with them, to get to know them, and to help them in whatever way that we can. So the U.S. bishops have been particularly vocal about the minimum wage, but it's for the most part fallen on deaf ears because there's been no change here in the state of Indiana. It still is $7.25, although every year there's some consideration of is this the year that we should increase it, and it's not. A couple of other things that mentioned about income equality is that I find fascinating. Of course, the U.S. is one of a number of developed nations where the economy is advancing. And I didn't bring the citation with me, I should have, but it's proven that the U.S. is the most unequal of all advanced economies in terms of distribution of wealth. We hang on to our wealth more than any other country. When there's a national or international disaster, the U.S. typically steps up and says, I'm going to get this. I mean, when Haiti had its earthquake, and other national, when Japan had its tsunami, the U.S. is there and donates food, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of percentage of the wealth that we have, we give far less than other advanced economies, such as Germany. So, and because of that, because we're the most unequal, the gap between the poor and the rich is widening. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but I'm always impressed and depressed by that. In 2013, 76% of all wealth here in the U.S. is owned by the richest 10%. The richest 20%, and this is internationally again, consume 86% of the world's resources. The richest 20% consume 86% of the world's resources. The poorest 20% consume 1%. But when you're in Haiti and have one meal a day, maybe, you're not a high consumer. The wealthiest 160,000 families own as much. 160,000 families own as much as the poorest 145 million. I mean, it just shows you the inequity of kind of the economy, both here in the United States as well as internationally. Just a couple of statistics here in Indiana. That in 2003, 1 in 11 Hoosiers lived in poverty. In 2014, 1 in 7 Hoosiers lived in poverty. And poverty, particularly among children, just really runs rampant. I wish I could confirm this, but I've heard a couple of years that 50% of our children here in Bartholomew County attending public schools are eligible for the school lunch programs.
It's probably higher than that.
Is it? I mean, Columbus is a wealthy city, but it just, let me just look downtown but it, how can 50% of our kids be eligible for school lunch programs? So, but again, not all is bad news. You know, one of the things I've talked about is the inequity in terms of health care. Particularly here in Indiana, we have hundreds of thousands of people without health care. But within the last couple of years, with Medicaid, there are many, many low-income people who are now covered by health care, which is just great. So, yeah, as directed by the Affordable Care Act. And, but in fact, I volunteer over at Volunteers in Medicine, which is a healthcare clinic for people who don't have health care. And there are any number of people who have been coming for years who now aren't eligible because they do have health care. So, you know, the church has believed for years that many people believe that health care is a privilege. You know, you work, you get health care. But the church has taught for years that the health care is a right. It's not a privilege. So, well, let's turn to the environment just for a little bit, and then I'll kind of finish up and we can have more discussion, or, well, not really, not yet. So, and maybe I'll just say a little bit about the environment. This has created lots of good things. People agree with the Pope in many, many ways. But there are a lot of people out there who disagree with the Pope and his belief that there is global warming, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, he's being very critical of people, particularly the United States, about how we're such a people of we buy and dispose, we buy and accumulate, we waste, we don't recycle. I mean, there's the criteria front page article, July 26th, just I guess last week, a call for responsibility, but it's all about what the Pope is saying in this encyclical. And the thing that I really like about the article, it also gives lots and lots of tips that if you do want to help take care of the environment, then you know, there's lots of different suggestions. But the environment essentially is created by God and given to us kind of on loan. You know, we don't own it. And because of that, we need to take care of it. I mean, that's really the thrust of what the encyclical is about. And we have a responsibility to take care of it. And so, this precious gift that God has entrusted to us, we need to take care of. And so, as I said, he has lots of good things to say. I heard that the encyclical is on St. B's website. Have any of you read it or read?
I've downloaded it, but not yet read it.
Okay.
Haven't done
Okay.
I read like the first 10 sections, it's very long. I put it on the website, you all need to read it. It's in Spanish too, if you want to read it in Spanish.
So, but the other two things that I want to talk about is, we're talking about the preferential option for the poor. But there's a couple of opportunities that each of us have in terms of how we can become more involved. Archbishop Tobin and the other 4 bishops of Indiana put together a pastoral letter that I think they issued this in March, that's called Poverty at the Crossroads, the Church's Response to Poverty in Indiana. And essentially it's challenging us, people in the state, to make the needs of the poor a priority and to take action to reduce the effects of poverty. And I haven't seen anything yet, but this was issued in March, and I've heard that, maybe Ali, you know, that the Archbishop is going to begin taking some action, putting this pastoral letter into action and inviting all of us, Catholics as well as non-Catholics, to participate. It would be our way of putting the preferential action into action.
Yeah, I believe that's the idea. I know we're trying to get Archbishop Tobin to come and speak about poverty at the crossroads. So we're hoping we can get him on our Theology Night Out schedule. So the adult theology on tap, Theology Night Out. I know that's one we're trying to get. So just to bring it to St. Peter's and make sure people are aware of it. And,
well, as I said earlier, the number of poor is growing rather than decreasing. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is all of the different ways here at St. Bartholomew, that you can become involved in, and particularly providing witness to social justice, particularly providing witness to the preferential option for the poor. St. Bartholomew, we've been members longer than any of you have lived. 43 years, but St. Bartholomew has a long history of being concerned about the poor and trying to meet the needs of the poor. This goes back to St. Bartholomew down at 8th and Sycamore, as well as St. Columba, and as well as the St. Bartholomew as we know it today. And I'm just going to mention a few. When Katrina was a number of years ago, Henryville, a tornado in Henryville in southern Indiana, Columbus in its flooding, St. Bartholomew members were very involved in responding to those disasters. Crew after crew went to Mississippi in response to Katrina, and a number of work crews went to Henryville, and certainly a lot stayed right here in Columbus and helped people who were affected by the flood. Peace and Justice Ministry, I don't know how familiar that is or if that's a name, but it's a ministry of St. Bartholomew. We're looking for new members to visit or to become members. But the primary function of this ministry is to assist local programs and services, like the Ecumenical Assembly, the Turning Point, the Shelter for Women, the Horizon House, the Sukasa. that's really the focus that we have, is to help the poor locally or the needy. We also provide support to Friends of Haiti, which is more global. But St. Bartholomew has a 23-year history of having an involvement in Haiti, and of course Haiti's the poorest country in this hemisphere.
Does St. Bartholomew send mission trips down there at all? Okay.
The youth have gone down, the youth have not gone down for a couple of years, but I think they plan to go next year. But they were going down pretty much yearly. And there are trips made by other people, and interested folks are welcome to go. There's a meal site at St. Bartholomew every Sunday where 40 to 50 people come in, are given a meal Sunday evening. I mean, that's as direct as you can get in terms of exercising the preferential option for the poor. And even things like equal exchange products once a month. The equal exchange products are sold. These are teas, coffees, chocolate bars, jams. But the idea behind it, all of the products grown are grown by small farmers, generally in Central America, South America. But these farmers are assured, guaranteed, a fair return for their produce. And so then they're sold here, and
It's all under the label of fair trade. Coffee is the second highest traded commodity in the world after oil. Okay? So coffee, the market, is subject. The price of coffee is subject to the market. And the market sometimes is a very low price for coffee. So that these people that grow the coffee don't even get what they
Invested in
Right.
growing it.
grow. Right, they don't even get a return on their investment. So what fair trade is about is supporting the small farmers that they get. Fair trade means working with small farmers so that they get a fair price for their coffee, or their tea, or their chocolate, or pecans, or honey, or whatever else they grow. So really by supporting that, you're supporting it's organic, it's shade grown, and considered gourmet, if you will. It costs a little more sometimes, but you're thing is you're supporting justice there. It's like the slogan, the coffee, every cup is a cup of justice. You're not supporting the bottom line of all these people who are trading coffee on the international market. You're supporting the small farmer to get fair wages so that he can feed his family and make a living, which is part of what justice is about. Have a sustainable product that's good for the land and
let me end with just a quote, and again, it's not Pope Francis, it's Saint Francis, who said to preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. Let our actions be our mouthpiece. They will know us by our love. So I've always liked that one. So, and maybe, hopefully, something you've heard this evening or will kind of be thinking about will lead you, or at least have you consider becoming more active. It's not to say that you're not active now, but just to know that the poor, not someone else's responsibility. The church believes they are our responsibility. So, okay, with that discussion.
Thank you.
I have a question. Because I guess when I hear that it's our responsibility, I completely agree. Should we be working though to make sure that the government is also making things more accessible to them, like so that they're also part of the the government? Obviously, when we talk about preferential option, our votes should be things that are good for the poor and the vulnerable, things like that. So what are a couple things that we can start doing now, like with our votes and with our money and with, everything that we have?
Well, certainly with voting, that knowing who the candidates are, doing some research about the candidates, their positions. That works a little better the more local, the state elections. But exactly, there's lots of websites that if you want to know what congressmen's beliefs are, or positions are, say for hunger, that's easily put together, or what their voting record is. So, and then letting the information that you find be your guide in terms of who you vote for. Writing letters. Every year we have this offering of letters that for hunger. We have and we take those letters to Congressman Messer and the two senators, and Todd Young, and I think it has an impact. So. It's a great organization. We get all kind of names. Once they get your name, though. So. Oh, yeah, I do have another handout. Has to do with the environment, and as I said, the best thing is if you, and this is on, you can access old criterions on the website, but this is not old, this just came out, I think, last week. But it's a wonderful list of what one can do to help take care of the environment. So, but I have a few other, this is a list that found a couple of years ago that you can also ask some suggestions what we can do. I like the one about the clothesline. How many here know what a clothesline is? Oh, okay. I'm impressed. Don't see many of those around.
I'm curious. I don't really know a whole lot about it, but I've heard the term thrown around. It's Chesterton's idea of distributivism. I'm curious if you've heard of it, and if you could explain what it is. It sounds like you know what it is. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, I had heard of it. I was confirming you saying it right.
Distributivism.
Distributivism.
Yeah.
Well,
I know it's related to the preferential option for the poor.
I don't know if this is it. I've heard the term. I generally don't use it because it's hard to pronounce.
Yep.
But, much of what you read in terms of the poor is like food. There are a lot of countries that get a meal a day. Any children would get a meal a day. But the meal may be a piece of bread.
Handful of rice and a handful of beans.
That's right.
I went on a mission trip with a group from Purdue, and that was literally, we were asking, health information and dietary information, and it was a handful of rice and a handful of beans.
Were you with St. Thomas Aquinas?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And that's exactly right. Much of the work that we do in Haiti anymore, we sponsor a tutoring program. But part of the tutoring program is ensuring that people get at least a snack. We sponsor adult literacy programs, and the people there will fix a meal being rice and beans. But my point is that the way I kind of have understood this, and I don't know if it's the correct understanding, but what I've heard about things like food, that there is enough food grown in the world. And so it's not that we have too many people for the amount of food that's grown. The issue is distribution. Not being able to get the food where it needs to be. Now, I don't know exactly. In fact, I'll go check this out maybe this evening, but I don't know if that's the way it's being used. But among poor people, it's not a lack of something. It's being able to get the resource to where it needs to be. So when was it that you were in?
It would have been over winter break or over Christmas break. 4 years ago. 4 years ago.
Your first trip to a
First mission trip anywhere. So yeah, the first trip out of the country either. So well, Canada, but it's not much different. So first trip to a third country.
Did I ask what impressions you came back with?
It was amazing how, yes, little they had, but how willing they were to give with what they did have. So we would go up to their houses and ask all these different survey questions about different health things, whether they had their vaccinations, if anyone in the household had AIDS or HIV or malaria, all these different things that we'd ask about. And yeah, some of the times they kind of turned red. And no, we don't have that. Or you wondered if their answers were truthful, but you went up and knocked on their door and said, "Can we ask you a few questions?" And everybody instantly went inside and pulled out all the chairs in the household, which usually was 3 or 4. Pulled out everything and said, "Yeah, come sit down with us and we'll talk with you." And there were several places that offered us water or fruits off the trees or whatever they had. So it was really kind of humbling to go in and these people that had nothing are so glad that we're there and talking to them and just being present, that they would offer anything they had. So it was really kind of a humbling experience. And we did these surveys up in the mountains up in Bodin, so it was far away from everything. At 8 o'clock, every electrical light went out. There was nothing. It was completely black, which is really cool in itself. But to get there, we had to go through Port-au-Prince, which is just a mess. Even, I think it was 2 or 3 years after the earthquake, trash burning in the streets, no sanitation to speak of, buildings being rebuilt. It was just, that was, I think, the most traumatizing part of the trip, was going through the big city that just wasn't, it used to be a nice city, but not anymore.
Any other comments or?
Just a thought, but I've heard about a congressman back in Ohio said all it takes for him to look at an issue seriously is 10 to 15 emails, phone calls. So, if if everyone here got in contact with Messer or Milo Smith, might turn his eyes to it.
Thanks for saying that, because I've heard the same thing. We've met with aides of various Congress people that said the same thing. It doesn't take much to get the ear of whoever the elected official is. So, the phone call is just as easy to do as an email, or it's amazing how in some ways they want to talk with you, office of, because their focus is, I'm elected, how do I stay elected? So, well, thank you very much. It's been fun.
Thank you.
I have a few announcements.